Just wanted to give a quick note on what Matt was talking about. We definitely would love everyone to stay for the welcome lunch if you're a little newer to the church. And I know for a lot of us, we've got a lot going on. This is actually a really quick lunch. We tend to keep things pretty concise, so you got to eat anyway. So stay, grab some food. Not a long meeting at all. We'd love for you to stay after. We're going to be meeting down in the basement. A little bit of if I haven't met you, my name's Dan. I have the privilege and the pleasure to be the pastor here at the Village. A little bit of a change. We've been going through this series through Romans 8 called Riches, but we're going to be taking a little bit of a change this week, kind of with our anniversary a couple weeks ago. Just great time baptizing some folks and just being reminded of this idea of new people following Jesus. And this past week, I was actually in class. I've been doing some doctoral ministry work, so I was in a week-long class in Philadelphia, and just it's tiring, but it's a really good thing for me because it reminds me just throughout the whole week thinking about the church and why we exist, why we do what we do. So for me, it personally led to much reflection about our church, and I wanted to take today, again, a little bit of break to talk about that, to remind us, because if for any organization, this is true for any group, but particularly for churches, I would think if you lose sight of your mission, if you lose sight of your purpose, why you exist, what happens is urgent things start to take precedence. And by urgent, they might be important or they might not, but they're urgent. They're right on your scope. They're causing a lot of noise. And what happens is these urgent things can start to take precedence, and maybe important things that are not causing as much of a loud sound can start to fall back. So it's important to keep your mission, your purpose ahead of you. Because church communities, and we've definitely fallen into this, you can become very busy doing a lot of different things. And some of these things are really good. It's usually good stuff. But we also have to be reminded we can't lose sight of why we do the things that we do here at the Village. And as Matt showed earlier, I think we have it up here as well, as our mission, transforming our communities into attending, connecting, and serving followers of Jesus. And he did a great job of explaining some of those aspects of attending, connecting, and serving. And we have to keep this in mind. It's all leading to this idea of followers of Jesus. That's really the key component. Our goal is to see more and more and more people follow Jesus. And we love to hoop this part. As for some people, it's the first step in following Jesus. Like, this church is the place where they first learned about the riches and the lavish grace of God. And Jesus, whose sacrificial kindness is shown through the cross and defeating sin and death. And for others, it's that whole idea of that they are a Christian already and they're coming in here and they're being equipped for service. But it's this whole idea of followers of Jesus. So if we're talking about transforming our communities to follow Jesus, we need to constantly be dwelling on what was important to Jesus. If we're trying to help people become more like Jesus, we want to be asking, what made Jesus' heart beat? What made Jesus just do what he did? What was he passionate about? What drove him? And I want to look at a few verses here from Matthew chapter 9. If you want to pick it up, there's also on the screen here, but it's on page 694 of the Bibles and benches. But this is from Matthew 9, 36 to 38. And it says, when he saw the crowds, this is Jesus, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. And when you read here, it says that he saw the crowds, that he had compassion on them. This word compassion, and I'm not that guy that usually says into Greek, because I don't remember much Greek from my stuff. I'm not good at that. But this is one of those words that caught my attention. This word compassion is splachnizomai. How can a word like that not grab your attention? Right? Splachnizomai. This literally means in the language to have your bowels yearn, to have your bowels churning. This word splachnizomai, compassion. So this is not just oh, wow, I feel bad for it. This is, within the depths of my soul, I'm feeling pain about this. I'm feeling moved about this. And what was he compassionate about? The crowds who didn't know him, who are far from him, who look like these poor sheep who didn't have a shepherd. I don't know how much time you spend around sheep. I have on missions. Sheep without a shepherd are poor, lost little things. They are walking around, no clue what they're doing. That's how he saw the people here, with this compassion that made his soul churn, his bowels yearn. Because we see that Jesus' whole life on earth was a mission. that he came to this earth on a rescue mission. And you can just track from his earliest words to his last. Some of his first recorded words to his followers, Matthew 4:19. His first call to his disciples, these guys, Peter and Andrew, these fishermen. He said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." This idea that I'm going to be getting other guys, and you're going to help more people to know who I am. And this was marking his whole life to the very end, Matthew 28:19. We looked at this a couple of weeks ago. "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." That to his very end, Jesus is just reiterating his point that our goal here is to help more and more people to know who I am. And his very last words in Matthew, at least what we have recorded in Acts chapter 1, verses 7 through 9, right before his ascension, he said to them, "It is not for you to know times or seasons that the Father has fixed by his own authority, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth." And when he had said these things, as they were looking on, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. What he's basically saying here to his closest followers, and it's grown from that original group, he's telling this group of a few hundred people, "Hey guys, I'm leaving, but you're going to represent me here, and we're going to start right here in Baltimore, then we're going to go to the county, and then we're going to go to the whole nation." That's what he's saying here. Yeah, everyone thinks, I'm leaving you my spirit, and you're going to be going forth in my name, and your life and your words, they're going to point back to my fame. You guys are going to make me famous. That's what he's saying here. So we see that this idea of reaching those who lived a life apart from him was crucial to Jesus' heart. And people dig the Jesus who's the philosopher. I mean, he's a philosopher, wise things. I mean, you can make like fortune cookies, hundreds of them from the stuff he said, really wise stuff. They dig the kind of compassion, the healer stuff, and the great teaching, and all that's a part of who Jesus is. We can't separate those things, but we have to remember that it was all driven out of compassion for people. That he came to this world not to just show off for 33 years or so, but he came here to install his rescue mission, and that he would use his very followers to execute it. That's what Christ did. So as we think about the church then, and Village Church, but I would say all churches that believe in the scriptures and what we're meant to be as we follow Jesus, we see here, can you imagine Jesus ever establishing a community that inwardly loves each other, but would not passionately focus on extending his grace, compassion, and good news of salvation to everyone possible? I mean, can you imagine a church like that exists? And, we can talk all about our kindness to each other, and that's good. We should be. This should be like fam here. I mean, we should be like brothers from another mother with one father, right? That's what we should be, close and kind to one another and embracing each other, helping one another out. That's good. But if it just stays there, is that the church Jesus was talking about? It can't be. And I think, especially knowing many of you, I genuinely believe many of us, we desire for the church to move outside of ourselves. But the reality, and I mentioned this in the very beginning, the reality of human nature is that without intentional focus, without talking about these things, the default for churches and just people is that we'll probably shift in existing for ourselves. If we're not intentionally focused on reaching outside of ourselves, just human default mode is we're prone to ourself. Survival mentality. What's going to work for me? I mean, that's just normal. And what ends up happening then is that, we talk about Christian love, and sometimes you think the opposite of love is hate. For the Christian, the opposite of love is actually not hate, though I'm sure that's there. It's more selfishness. Because the Christian's love is all about sacrifice, thinking of those outside of yourself. And the opposite of that is selfishness, kind of being prone to. And some of you know that, right? Because that's what Christ has delivered you from, kind of a self-centered life, to one that's focused on him so you could focus on others. So without an intentional view of mission, we're just going to create this big Christian nursery. And I'm not meaning growing trees. People. like this big nursery where we take care of people, and we offer nice little programs to keep Christians. And I say some of this, I'm being a little facetious on purpose. Programs are essential. They're good. They're needed. We want to grow you. I mean, hopefully you feel cared for if you're here at the village. We're giving you food. I mean, we want to care for you, and we want to grow you, but it's for the purpose of equipping you to go outside of yourself. Otherwise, we become just a big bunch of Christian babies. Wah, wah, I don't like the music anymore. I don't like this food. Oh, it's too cold in here. Oh, why did they take my seat? And that's what churches become if you're not focused on outside. You're just focused on what's this church not doing for me anymore? What's this church not provide for me? Man, why can't that dude preach in a way that really connects with me? I'm giving him my time. Man, I'm giving you like 40 minutes here. And we become focused then on what we're not getting perhaps, or what's lacking from our perspective, rather than this idea, what's the bigger picture here? Why are we gathering like this in the first place? So what makes the difference? We have to view ourselves in the same way that Jesus did, as missionaries to our world. That we have to view ourselves as missionaries. And even as I say missionary, depending on some of your background here, it may just bring up certain images to your mind. And I have a picture of a missionary here. And, for most of us, when we think of the word missionary, we generally think of someone that's going to like another far-off land, and you usually feel really bad for them, though you don't say that. You feel you're like, man, how are you going to like survive without Starbucks, man? Really? Do they have Wi-Fi? And, things like that. Like, we kind of think of someone going far away. But we have to also realize America is not a Christian nation anymore. Because that mentality of missions is going somewhere else, it's a really kind of arrogant, paternalistic attitude, as if we are the Christian nation having this thing to take to all the savages around the world. That's totally, if you want to know the truth right now, other countries are sending missionaries to America because of how jacked up this country is. That's what America, and again, and some people, they send me hate mail when I start talking like this. America is not a Christian nation. It might have been born on some Christian principles, but the solution for America is not getting back to America what it always was. People say, man, it'd be just great if we got back to the morals of like a previous generation when America was great. No, Holmes, I'm not going back to the 50s because I wouldn't be able to sit with some of you at a counter. We'd be at like different water. Everything wasn't just great because of nostalgia. We have to be careful of that. So this idea of missions, we have to get out of this kind of paternalistic, it's just about going over there, and recognizing what does it look like for us to live right here where we are with a missional perspective and attitude. Because if we understand our calling as a church community, we recognize that we've been given a calling to be sent as a light to our neighborhoods, our schools, our city, our world. And that our lives as followers of Jesus are to be missional. And, we talk about living a missional life. It involves a lot of aspects. I think a lot of it is living a life of justice, living a life of kindness, service, being involved in the communities. I think those things are all important, and I hope the village always has that. But as we do that, we can't lose sight of the fact that a really critical aspect of living missionally is also evangelism. It's just a very important part of what it means to be missional. And for some of you, even as I say the E word, evangelism, that's like a dirty word for some of us, whether you're a Christian or not, and you're sitting in this room. Because, whether you were raised in the church or not, that word evangelism kind of like sometimes it sends off these buzz signals and stuff. And I have some different images of this word evangelism up here. I don't know if you can go, but so this guy's, he's like holding a Bible back there, like child evangelist. I've got a message, and that's what we kind of think, right? Someone like a preacher, like really, and maybe you think that's how I am, right? But kind of like fire and brimstone and like yelling up front and like kind of deliverance. Next picture. This one's just weird, right? Just like dude holding this Bible away. It's like everyone's trying to reach for it. I'm not even sure what that's talking about, but this kind of like idea of I've got this message for you. You can't quite see it here, but this is like the kind of the fire, right? And sometimes that you think of that idea of like fire around like kind of a turn or burn, fire and brimstone, like this idea of kind of a scary message of evangelism. Some of you, that's what's like made you a little iffy about when you think about evangelism, because you think it's just like a fear tactic. it says chosen soldiers and this singing evangelist. Maybe we can book him. I'm sorry for being mean. But this idea of kind of like when we think of evangelism, some interesting kind of ideas, and this soldier mentality, kind of a warlike, like being on the offensive, being on attack is often attached to evangelism. And I don't even know what this is. I guess the picture speaks for itself there. Some of these legitimately, and we can please get off that. We can get it. Yeah. Oh, actually, one more here. Again, turn to Jesus or burn in hell. And if you've ever been part of one of these marches, I'm just really glad you're here at the Village now. But I'm not to condemn you, but this is right what many people think of when they think of evangelism, right? Kind of like hanging out on the street corner, just yelling at people and telling them how evil they are and how jacked up they are and how much they need Jesus because they're just wretched. And which, that might all be true, but the way you convey the message is it's kind of scary there. I think that's all we had, right? Some of these should legitimately make you shudder because some of the identification that then comes with evangelism, it's made you shy away from the concept. It's made you say, yeah, you know what? I think I believe in people coming to know Jesus. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be holding some sign and telling people they're like going to burn, or I don't want to be like, this, whatever it might be. And I'm right there too. I remember one quick story. This is a few years back. I think I was on vacation actually in another area, and I was at a department store, and I was walking around, and this dude came up to me, and I imagine I was wearing a sweatshirt of either a school or city or something, but we automatically started a conversation, and he was just, and I don't really, I kind of talk to strangers in public places, but I'm not used to other people doing that with me. So we're just talking, and it's cool because my wife was shopping, and I don't need to be too involved with that, so I'm just hanging out, and then for about like good 5 minutes or so, he's asking about, oh yeah, you went to there, and oh, I know people who are involved with this. So, and he even started bringing some ministry things in. Oh, do you know these? And I was like, yeah. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like we've got a lot of natural connections. And then he brought out this like card and said, hey, I've got this real, we've got a lot. I got this business opportunity that I've started up, this business venture, and I would love for the chance to talk to you about this because I'm going to go through a presentation and you can get on the ground floor of this great thing. And I was just like, seriously, Holmes? Seriously, you just took my time and trying to pretend to be my friend so that you can get me on your business venture? I mean, really, that's why you're doing that? And I felt so used. I felt so cheap. I felt kind of dirty. I felt weird. I felt like this guy didn't really care about me at all. He just had this agenda to get this message across. And often, isn't that how often evangelism feels? Like we've got a sales pitch. And maybe this reflects what I look like. And I've had a lot of people come up to me and ask me if I want to hear about Jesus. Maybe that's not a good sign. I guess maybe I don't look very Christian. But, it's like a sales pitch, right? Until trying to seal the deal, trying to close this thing. And again, I have no problems at all with conveying this message, but I don't think that's necessarily what Jesus was intending when he was talking about being salt and light. And the reason why I'm sharing all that is this is where we have to be really careful because so many of us, we make decisions on how we live as a response to something negative. What I mean by that is because of all these negative ideas of evangelism, what we've seen, we then in response go the other way and say, well, I don't want to be attached to that at all. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm not one of those weird Christians. I'm not one of those like in-your-face strange guys. What happens then, here's the thing. As much as you and I might have been turned off by certain methods of evangelism, from all the evidence of what I see in Jesus' life, it still seems that he's serious about sharing his message. That it still seems that it's important for Jesus for people to find salvation from their sin and from their brokenness and from death and from an eternity in hell. It seems like Jesus is still really serious about that. What then does it mean for us as we live missionally at the church? What then does it mean for us as we talk about being on mission and evangelism? A few different things and just kind of following along with our mission. One idea of living missionally, we talked about attend. And for some of you, if you're new to the church and you were looking at our mission statement and saying, man, isn't a mission statement supposed to like kind of inspire you to great things? Attend seems kind of just lame, like attend. please set a higher bar for me than a 10. We're all about keeping things simple because the truth is we live in a really consumeristic culture. And it's not church, it's just the world. Everything from mass media to purchasing to how you use the internet, everything is about what can we do for you? How can we make your life easier? How can we cater to your particular needs? And that's not a bad thing because I like Amazon just like everyone else. But the thing is, we bring that mentality into the church. And we somehow have this idea that for us to be in the church and to follow Jesus, we start asking, well, what does this church do for me? I don't really like the way they do that, or that doesn't necessarily meet the way I like, and we start to ask these different questions. And again, I'm not saying you should ask certain questions. You should ask, do they teach the Bible here? Do they believe that there are three persons of God? Things like that. It's good to ask questions, but we also have to ask, are we trying to create this mentality in our mind that we're going to create the perfect church that works for us? And we'll go there when it's convenient for us, when there's not other things in play. Almost as if it's like we're doing a favor by going to church or being part of a church. And this is not meant to try to like guilt you into saying, oh, you wretched. It's not that. It's just the reality of our culture. We shop for everything, even when it comes to church. And we have that mentality. We like comparison shop. Which one is and we ask these different questions. And part of our goal as a church, not just as a church, but as Christians, is to move people from this consumeristic approach to a missional perspective. To start to ask, like Larry mentioned last week, not so much what can the church do for me, but why would God put me in this church? How is God going to advance his kingdom by my presence being part of the village? Does that excite any of you that you are not just some person who randomly happens to come here, but God might want you to be here for a specific purpose? And specifically, when we talk about worship gatherings, and I want to make really clear, we do not have some scorecard in the back. Our elders don't meet after every Sunday worship and say, all right, was Bob there this week? Oh, man, he was away. It must have been Ravens pregame. Okay. Was Sally there? Oh, yeah, I saw. Okay, check her off. We go, oh, wow, 3 weeks in a row. Praise God, she gets a sticker after. We don't do that. We don't do that. And I hope you hear what I'm saying. I don't think it's a measure of your spirituality whether you are in church worship attendance every single week or not. But here's the thing. What would it look like to approach Sundays with a missional attitude? Not just you think I can make it today? It's such a nice day outside. Wow, that's right in the middle of the late morning. That's when that's like the perfect weather, and this festival's going on here. And again, that's not all bad, but perhaps we could ask this question: what would it look like to approach church and worship with this paradigm that is not all about you? That it's maybe not even about all you're going to gain through it. And I hope you receive something from the teaching, from the music, from the fellowship. I really do. I hope you get fed by the bagels. I really do hope you do. But honestly, for us at the church, when we're thinking evangelism, missional as a village church, we are blessed to be a church where we still continually have people who don't know Jesus walking in on their own or being invited. So your presence here is critical for you. Again, come to church, hear the sermons, listen to music, sing, do all that. But for you to meet some people, for you to make some relationships when some people maybe that don't know Jesus, and this is an opportunity for you to love people. And you don't even need to go anywhere. It's like right here. Loving the city, being engaged in that. So attending is a huge part of the step of evangelism. Another aspect, living missionally, to serve. That, the reason we serve community is not to just check off our community service hours. I mean, churches don't have requirements like that to get like whatever. We don't have to do that. But for us, it's not even just being a good neighbor, though I think that's part of it. We serve community because we believe in a renewed creation. By our service, whatever ways it might be to our neighborhood, but even within here, what we're saying is we believe God has come and he's repaired things. God has renewed creation, and we're, through our living, when we're fixing up a park or when we're giving out food or we're helping in different homeless outreach, whatever we're doing, we're saying that the brokenness of the world, Christ has come to repair it, and his church is a symbol of that fixing. So that's why we serve. That's why we challenge you guys to serve both here but also outside. We have things coming up, a Halloween night. We're just going to put some stuff out there and have probably a photo booth and candy and stuff. We invite you to come involved. Christmas time, we're probably going to do affordable Christmas market again. We invite you to serve in these ways, again, as Matt mentioned, for you, for your own development. But here as well, Matthew 5:16, and we don't have this up here, but so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Part of your service is for people to see what you're doing, and after they say, wow, that's a really great way that you love the city. You're such a good citizen. Not for you to say, yeah, you know it. Yeah, I got a heart for the city. No, for you to say, well, you know what? The truth is I'm actually kind of a self-centered person, but there's this Christ who's entered my life, and he's given his life for me, so now I serve as a response. And that your good works reflect the God who serves you through life. Living missionally, connect. You know, this is really about relationships. And obviously one aspect of that is in community here. And we talked a lot about this, but the main way of connection at the Village is in groups. And I want to make really clear to say, just being in a group does not guarantee automatic deep connection. Because sometimes I think people in church get kind of hurt by that. Because they're like, you know what? Your life has been so lacking and so shallow and so lame. If you join this group for 12 weeks and hang out with these people and for 1 hour a week, you will automatically experience deep riches of God's grace in your life, and you will never be the same again. That's just not right. I mean, that's not fair on a small group leader, first of all, but it's not fair to them. But I don't think that's the way it happens. But what it does give you, it gives you some steps to possibly start to make some deeper relationships with maybe a few people, because most of us don't have the capacity to even get that deep with like 10, 12 people. But maybe it'll be a couple. And you start to get a little bit deeper there. And here's a practical thing why we need community. The reason why a lot of folks in churches get burnt out on mission is that they're not seeing the change that is happening. Because you can come on Sundays and hopefully you're seeing some of the change. Realistically, you're just going to kind of from afar see God doing some stuff. But when you're in a community, when you're in a group with a few other people and you're hearing from their own mouths the way God is working in their lives, you're able to see, wow, God is moving in our midst. Wow, God is doing something in this church. Wow, I should continue to give and serve and to donate my time and resources and money and effort because God's doing something. Wow, because I'm seeing it in this person week after week. And we need those relationships to remind us God's working. And, you know, as Christ himself said in John 13, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. In the love that we display for each other, people are able to see, wow, God, there's a real God. God is moving. But I want to move from there because when we talk about connecting for a lot of churches, those relationships end in the church. We talk about connecting, we connect well here, but that's kind of where it stops at the borders of these walls. But for the missional Christian, connecting also means relationships with those outside of the Christian faith. It has to. Has to mean friendships and kindness and service and just hanging out with people who might not be Christians. And this is why, as a church, we're not heavily programmed. And if you're newer, you might think, man, this is just a lazy church. They just don't, there's no Zumba class here. And I used to have a Zumba class back in my church. And there's like no knitting for, what's wrong with this church? Well, we purposely focus on Sunday worship and groups because we don't want your calendar every night in blue to say Village Church, Village Church, Village Church, Village Church. We purposely don't want that because I'd rather you be spending your time with people who are not part of the Village Church. Does that make sense? To anyone but me? Really, we want your time to be freed up so that the riches that you're having invested in your life here, you're able to take that to your unique community that you represent. And man, I love the diversity represented in our church here because how many different groups are represented then in the city here? That you take what you're getting here at the church and you go to them, whether it's on a campus or whether it's in a recovery group somewhere or whether it's in a mom's group or whether it's at the gym or whatever it might be. You're taking your unique, what God is doing in your life, back to your own community. And we need to have these relationships with people who are not Christian if we want to have credibility about sharing the message. And we have one verse from 1 Peter 3:15 here. But in your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. And this verse is often used as kind of that like verse to say, you always need to be ready to share. You always need to be ready to be able to talk about Jesus, and I think it's true. But that one part there, those three words, who asks you, I think is key. Because the goal is to eventually have a spiritual conversation. The thing is, most people you just meet on the street are not going to ask you spiritual questions. I mean, I don't think you're going to be sitting there waiting for the bus and it's a little late, so they're going to turn to you and say, have you ever thought about how a good God could allow bad things to happen? I mean, that really doesn't happen, I don't think. I mean, God can do whatever he wants. I don't think that really happens. But what happens is as you start to have a relationship with someone, as you start to just get to know each other, maybe it's a neighbor, you're just talking through your yards for like years, and you're just becoming buds. Maybe you share a drink together. Maybe you just watch the game together. Maybe you just hang out together. Maybe you go watch movies together. Maybe you don't talk about much spiritual things, but the one common thing of every single human being born on this earth, you will encounter hardship and brokenness. Whether it's in your body or in your family or in your finances or in your soul. And at those moments, you're looking for anyone who seems to have a better grip on this than you do. At those moments, you remember that guy who was not very pushy maybe, but who said, hey, can I pray for you? Or, hey, why don't you check out my church someday? And you remember people like that when you're at your desperation points. Because we need to, especially those of you that are younger, you need to have this pressed into your brain because you've been told many other messages. You've heard things like, share the gospel or preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words, and it's attributed to certain people when it's not really ever spoken by those people. The only bad thing about those messages, it's not true. The gospel is always involving speaking aspects. Do kind things. Serve hard. Serve till you have no energy left. But in the end, if you never talk about Jesus, what you're doing might actually be very cruel to someone because what you're telling them is, be a good person like I am. Or they're looking at you and they're saying, wow, Joe is just amazing. I mean, he loves his family and he serves in so many different ways and he's so good with his money and he's so disciplined and he doesn't waste things and he doesn't curse and he actually loves his wife and, wow, he's just a great guy. I can never be like Joe. When the message has to be, yeah, you know what? Your life is in a pretty good spot, but it's the truth that without Christ, I wouldn't be here. I'm not a good person. Jesus is. That people need to know that. Otherwise, you're setting up this high bar of trying to be like you, Mr. Perfect, Miss Perfect. They need to know we're all jacked up, we're all broken, but it's the Christ that brings us hope. Because contrary to what we hear, our faith is never meant to be a private matter. Sometimes it needs to be private, but it's not meant to be something we keep to ourselves because that's actually the very opposite of the way of Christ, who was always about sharing himself. Maybe for you guys, you can ask yourself this question. It's as simple as asking, who has God placed around me, and how will I intentionally love and serve them as Christ would? Who has God placed around me? And how will I intentionally love and serve them as Christ would? I love this verse from Acts 17, verse 26, where it says, and he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place. And as you look at that, what that's basically saying is, there are no accidents in your life. You have been placed exactly where you are at this point in history because of God's design to have you here where you're at. Your brokenness you've gone through. Some of you think you chose to be in Baltimore because a worker's going, no, Holmes, God wanted you here. He brought you here. This might have been your first choice or your safety. It doesn't matter. God wanted you here now. He knew you would be here. Some of you thought God has his plans to have you here now, whether you arrived here by your will or not. And he's put the people who are around you in your life for a purpose. Your neighbors are not just random folks who happen to move in there because the property value was a little better. God has this design to have you where you're at for a purpose. There are no accidents. And I'm reminded of this just even in my own life because I confess one of the great things about our church right now is our church is growing. one of the really difficult things about our church right now is our church is growing. So I'm finding my time stretched to the max. Like there's just, I'm a little big, but there's really not enough of me to go around to everyone. I'm feeling that crunch. So when it comes to some of those things I did earlier on, like just walk around the neighborhood and just talk with people, I'm finding myself doing less and less of that. But God just kind of convicted me recently, and that one of our neighbors who moved in earlier this past year, kind of getting to know them. And, I talk about it with you guys, knowing your neighbors. So I'm thinking, I can't be some hypocrite and not get to know my neighbors. So I try to do some, but being totally honest, it's kind of surfacey. It's like, hey, how you doing? Hey, you never need to borrow anything, let me know. And, kind of those kind of neighbor relationships. But God convicted me a while back to just throw out kind of say, hey, you know what? We've got I'm part of a church here in Hampden. Why don't you come on? This is like Easter and come in. No interest at all. And we just have that good, cordial kind of neighbor relationship. And this dude looks like he has it all. Just bought the house, good job. I can say this safely as a man with confidence. Good-looking guy, sharp dresser. It looks like he's got it all. Good job. And in my mind, I'm thinking, someone like that doesn't need Jesus. Last week, and without going into all the details, he just gave me a call. He said, hey, man, can we talk for a sec? And we got out on our porch. He just started saying, I have no one else to talk to, but I feel like I've hit rock bottom. I feel like I've done everything I'm supposed to in my life, and I'm empty. My soul is like a big hole there. Can you talk to me? I'm like, okay, sure. And just he's pouring his heart out and just crying. He's saying, I have no one else that I can talk to about this stuff. But I remember you saying you're a pastor, so I figured you might want to hear my story. And after that occasion, we've set up times to meet regularly now and things like that, which is cool. But it just kind of God was gently rebuking me, saying, don't get so caught up in just doing church stuff that you forget that your goal is to want to see more followers of Jesus. And to be out there and to make yourself available and to let people know that there's hope beyond what they might just see for their lives. And guys, we have to be intentional about that. Otherwise, human nature, our flesh, we will be prone to asking, how is this benefiting me? If it happens with me, I'm guessing you're not that much spiritually mature than I am. I'm guessing it happens with you too. That's just default mode. And I want to say this quickly, because I think it would be easy at this point to say, the reason that we don't do evangelism and we don't really give a darn. We just don't care. We're all just so selfish. And, that might be some of us here. Let's just be honest. But I really think for a lot of us, that's not the case. I think we do care. I think we do want people to know about Jesus. But maybe more than a knowledge issue, it's an issue of our own experience with God. That maybe, and that's one of the reasons we worship like this on Sundays, this is not to have a big show. And I hope you get entertained, maybe. It's not really have a show. It's to give you a big glimpse of God. It's to give you a big picture of God, to orient your life around God, because you and I will never be convinced to tell anyone about anything unless we are experiencing that ourselves. Because there's something happens when you experience something, you can't help but want other people to know. You saw Guardians of the Galaxy this summer. What did you do after that? Yo, you need to see this movie. It's amazing. I know it's like the cartoon, but this is different. And you experience something good. You meet a wonderful guy. What do? You got to tell everyone, you need to meet this man. He is just amazing. He's not just good looking, he's good soul. When you experience good, when you eat a good meal, oh my goodness, you have to see what I ate. I'm going to Instagram for everyone to see. There's this desire within us when we experience something good and real, we want to share it. So the Christian faith, if it's just this knowledge, dead people need Jesus to be alive, it's not going to compel most of us. But if it's, this God knew my wretched soul, and he gave his very own life through his son for me, and he took my sin and my shame and my guilt upon a cross, and he conquered sin and death, and you don't know how much I fall every day in the recesses of my mind, yet he's so patient with me. He's so kind. He knows how I fall to my lust and my addictions and my anger and my pettiness. He knows how just fixed I am on myself. But man, he doesn't give up on me. He's just so kind. He knows all the ways I've screwed up, but all he does is keep welcoming me back, keep drawing me back. And when you experience a God like that, you want to say to other people, you need to know this God. It's different than what you've heard. It's different than what you've experienced. You need to know Jesus. Because I want to encourage you guys, your job is not to change the whole world. And I know some churches or maybe some ministries tell you that your goal is to go out and change the whole world. This generation can do it. No, we can't, because every generation's told that. Let's just be honest. Your job is not to change the whole world. As one pastor puts it, your job is not to be, I think, like amazing. God's already amazing. Your job is to be obedient. Your task is to be obedient to where God has put you right now. Whoever God has put you around, maybe it's just one or two people. Maybe it's a group. Your job is not to change the whole world or the whole city. Your job is to just be responsible to love and serve those that God might have put into your circles right now. And I want to encourage you not to underestimate what loving one person can accomplish. I can't help but thinking back a little bit on my past. And I know I stand up here and I look like, man, that guy is like the most holy man I've ever encountered in my life. He must just come out of the womb praising Jesus. And that's not the case. I mean, had a lot of years far away from God. I remember being in youth group, and I was that kid who was a little too sharp in my tongue. And I remember joking around with my youth pastor one day and got really ticked off, and I mouthed him, "Bleep you." I was that kid. And all I remember is him patiently bringing me aside and talking with me and saying, yeah, that's not how we conduct ourselves. And investing in me. And he would meet with me Sunday after Sunday after that for discipleship. This is a long time ago. I remember another a leader in college. I went to Penn State, and my freshman year, I just didn't want to have anything to do with God. But this one guy found me. Older man on campus, disciple, and he would come to my room every week to go take me to do door-to-door evangelism, and I would hide in my room and pretend I wasn't there. He would be, and I didn't even have the courage to tell him, yeah, I'm not going to do it. I would just like say, oh, sure, I'll be there, and just hide in my closet for like, dunk, 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 dunk. Hey, Dan, dunk, 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 dunk. All right, we'll go away soon. That was me. But he invested himself in me long term, even when I fell away many times. And I want to encourage you, your job is not to change the whole world, because that's kind of overwhelming. But your job is in the power of the Spirit to ask him, God, who have you put around in my life? Who are some of my dorm mates? Who are some of my neighbors? Who are some of the people I work with? Who are some of the people in my mom's group? Who are some of the people I work out with? Who are some of the people I go to group with? And maybe those are the people you have ordained in my life right now for me to love them and serve them and leave the results up to you. Because, guys, that's what we're called to do as a church. Sometimes pastors have the tendency to get up and say, our church will change the world. Yeah, well, we're really little part of that. Let's just be part of the change with one person around us. Amen? Bow your head with me. Let's pray. I'm going to invite our worship team to come up. Just simple response today, I think, as we sing and as we invite you to come up and receive communion. For some of us, I think the simple response for you to ask, God, what are some ways that Christianity or the church has become too much about me and about my needs? And maybe I could ask, what would it look like for me to have eyes for even that one person in my life? Who is that? For me to serve, for me to be kind to, for me to perhaps give a different impression of what they've always thought a Christian is. And maybe you can just take time to pray that. But I want to also speak very clearly for some of us, maybe the best response you can make is to ask yourself, do I know Jesus that way? And I don't know if people always understand when I do this. I never assume that just because you grew up in church your whole life, that means you're a Christian. What that probably means is no one ever asked you a Christian because they just saw you since you were a little kid. And for some of you, maybe you need to ask, perhaps the reason I don't feel that much inclination to share about this is I've never really experienced Jesus for myself. And could I welcome you? Maybe it's a courageous step for you to say, even if you've been in a church culture your whole life, to say, I need Jesus. Just like he's been talking about other people needing Jesus, I need Jesus. And I've done some stuff in my life, but I can't believe God's mercy is available for me. And his grace, he wants to give me his love and approval and acceptance, even though I don't deserve it, because of what Jesus did on the cross. If that's you, could I welcome you to just jot it down in a card or talk to one of us? Let us know. Because the goal for us is we believe this is not trying to sell someone something that's nasty. It's not like a late night infomercial, something someone doesn't really need. This is life. This is hope. And the church, my prayer for our church is we get a little bothered in a good way about that. Let's not get satisfied in just doing nice church on Sundays. What does it look like for us to be the church sent out missionally? Heavenly Father, as we just come to you right now, I pray for my friends here. And many of us, Lord, are just at different places in our relations. Some of us don't know you. And Lord, that may not be a judgmental thing, but just a realistic, honest thing. That maybe it's your kindness that you're allowing us to be here so that we could hear about who Jesus really is, rather than churchianity or kind of a civil religion. Maybe you're trying to teach us what it means to have a relationship with this God. And Lord, if that's the case for anyone here, would you draw them to yourself in that gentle, amazing way that you do? And for others of us, Lord, perhaps you're rousing us from just that easy temptation it is to kind of settle into a church that's about us, a Christianity that's about us. Lord, may we love each other dearly in this room, but it can never be about just this room. Remind us of that call, Lord, to be on mission. And may we be reminded, first of all, of the God who was on mission, that Jesus Christ came to this earth on a rescue mission and rescues us. And that's what would move us, Lord, to live out that same call to our city, to our state, to our nation, to our world. So we love you, Lord. So I would encourage you to pray. If you want, I'll be up here, or some other people you'd like to pray together. But I would encourage you to receive communion if you're Christian. If you're not a Christian, take some time to pray about that. We'd love to talk with you, and let's sing. Let's respond to God. Let's be reminded of his great love in our life.